For example, I got off work today. Just offline. This address will be released after going offline. I don't need this anymore. Need to be offline. This address is recycled. Then the server will take this address away for other devices to use. I came to work again the next day. The PC wants the address again. The PC will look for it to get the address again. So this time it got the address. It may not be exactly the same as the previous address. Doesn't really matter for PC. Because we are online. It doesn't matter what address. As long as it works. But like some equipment fixed inside the company. Devices like printers and cameras. Many cameras are now connected to the internet. Like I'm in a surveillance office. I can remotely view the information of this camera. Because it is also on the switch. Can be attached. So it's online. Then if you are online, we are going to do some information exchange. With the address of the switch here. And for many monitoring software, we can directly fill in the address. Then to complete the information exchange communication. I don't want this camera address to change every day. Sometimes the camera is turned off at night. Get a new address the next day. I rebind its address on the monitor. This is too much trouble. Second, as a printer. Now some printing in the company is connected to it through IP. We connect to this printer in the software. After connecting up, we want its IP address to remain unchanged. The printer generally does not power off. Otherwise, every time I use this printer, I have to check its IP again. Then rebind. To be able to connect to the printer remotely. Let it print for me. This is really too much trouble. We will directly bind one today. If you are interested in the excluded one, you can take a look at the command. Actually it means. Let me first explain to you what exclusion means. In fact, many orders. I pick some typical ones. Exclusion is. I now have a large network segment. Then in the network segment I can specify. A certain part to a certain part of the address is excluded. Then in the future, it will be assigned to the printer. It will not be assigned to printers within this range of addresses. But what we want today is assign a fixed IP to the printer. Keep its address unchanged. We call it to issue a fixed IP for a fixed MAC address. Trouble in Cisco. Let's take a look at how Cisco configures. These are some of the more commonly used commands. Or configure it on the server. Before configuration, we need to check the address of PC4 first. Show IP. Let's see its MAC. I will copy it. After copying is complete, we exit now. Now go to configuration mode. To define an address pool. That is, on 4 devices. If you want to issue an IP for a single device, you need to define a separate address pool for this MAC address. Give it a separate IP. IP DHCP pool VPC4. Now after defining the address pool, I want to assign a separate address. We can enter a question mark. What we just wrote is network. Defines a network segment. But now I just want to configure it for a single host. So we don't need to define the network segment here. Enter host directly. I want to assign an address to this host A. Let's say I assign it 192.168.10.123. 24-bit mask. Because we are an address assigned. So just type host. Do not enter network. Then configure the gateway for it. Default router 192.168.10.254. Then DNS. For DNS. In fact, we can write multiple. For example, 1.1.1.1, 2.2.2.2. It's all okay. Enter preferred and alternative. The last step, I want to bind it to MAC. The command to bind MAC is client identifier. In fact, it means its MAC address. We'll just paste it right now. This is the MAC address of PC4 we just looked at. You can't just press enter. I put a question mark here for everyone to see. When you configure here, must conform to this format. Now you will find it does not conform to this format. Not only does not meet. Add a 01 before the very beginning. Cisco has to be configured like this. 01 stands for Ethernet. So after that, separated by 4 digits. The last 04 can be written here. Then press enter. Bind now. I have now defined an address pool. Then I put a 10.123 address like this, assigned to such a MAC address. Let's take a look at PC4. I now let it dynamically get an address. IP DHCP. Okay. I get it now. 192.168.10.254. That's what we're talking about. Issue a fixed IP for a fixed MAC. This is a small application in DHCP. We don't experiment much today. It's not hard to do. The configuration may be simpler than when talking about VLANs before. I turn it off first. Before talking about the next knowledge point, I first open the environment. Otherwise it's a waste of time. After opening it, run it first. Everyone should have a simple understanding of DHCP in the NA phase. In the future, we will learn snooping and relay in the NP stage. It will be relatively more difficult. I saw some friends ask, how many IPs in the company need to build a separate DHCP server? Instead of using the router to open the DHCP service. It's not just about the number of IPs. It also has something to do with your network planning. But usually, medium and large enterprises may have dozens of devices. Generally speaking, DHCP can be done by simulation. But it mainly depends on which node your device is on the network. If the core equipment in the network has to undertake some other functions, then usually we don't deploy a DHCP server to it. That is to say, it still depends on the location of the device where you deploy this protocol. Usually it is not directly related to IP. Mainly depends on your business type. Generally speaking, the device can almost connect to the DHCP server, because it bears a relatively large traffic flow. And possibly more. Make a backup. Okay. Next we talk about the Cisco Discovery Protocol. This is called CDP. Discovery of interconnections between devices. The content of PPT is also very simple. As long as the Cisco devices are now connected, then the protocol will be run accordingly. I can check what devices are connected to the device now. In fact, it is to help you draw topology. It will tell you what kind of equipment is there next to the number 1, number 2, and number 3 ports of this device. It is equivalent to providing you with some information. But it's only available inside Cisco. CDP does not require you to run this protocol. But you need to configure the address for this interface, because they interact with some data. This is our device. I have already configured the address on the device, because this does not need to be assigned in class. This is just for show. Show IP interface brief. Let's check. I am under interface 2 of R1. Configured a 12.1.1.1. Then configure it under the R2 interface. Show IP interface brief. I have allocated addresses under the R2 interface. Same for R3. I only configured the address. Protocol also does not work.